Hey, welcome back, everyone. So, interesting news today. Biden has signed a war powers resolution. The United States is going to be sending troops to Africa. And I want to talk about what's going on with that. They're saying it's to protect U.S. assets on the ground and so on, but they're also not evacuating U.S. citizens. So, if they're sending troops there and they believe they should sign a war powers resolution in order to guard Americans and make sure they're okay, but they're also not going to be evacuating people, what are they doing? We'll go into this. Also, in Sudan, where the war is now brewing, you have fighters who've broken into one of the major virus laboratories, which contains several deadly viruses, which would be detrimental if they got out. The WHO is declaring it is extremely, extremely dangerous. And yes, they repeat extremely. And here we are. Get ready for the potential next pandemic if this whole thing heads south, and maybe even the beginning of a new war. As this is happening, Russia has declared that they have entered a hot war meaning guns and bullets, with the United States and with the West. And this is a big shift. You know, the war, if you read some older writings, war is an extension of politics by other means. When diplomacy and normal political structures can no longer maintain stability or peace, or people can no longer come to agreements, the result is war. And there's several layers of war. There's proxy war, like Afghanistan and so on, where the U.S. was back in the Mujahideen, and Russia was fighting, of course, the Mujahideen. Like the later Afghanistan, where the CCP and Pakistan were supporting the Taliban, and the U.S. was fighting the Taliban. And now between Russia and Ukraine, where Russia's fighting Ukraine and the U.S. is arming and supporting Ukraine. The Pentagon leaked documents show that the U.S. actually has troops there helping the Ukrainian soldiers, and based on this, Russia is declaring they're now entering the next stage of a war with the United States, a hot war. Pretty serious stuff, but as this is happening, the Chinese Communist Party is stepping in and saying they need to broker peace. And if that happens, that's going to have huge implications for what the global structures of world governance are, and I'll explain this. Crazy stuff, folks. A lot going on. Real quick, this is the last live Q&A in the morning we'll be doing on Crossroads. Crossroads is going prime time. We're still going to, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to be doing the show 5 days a week. The time is going to be different. So we're going to be 7 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be 5 days a week. We're still going to be on Epoch TV, but we're also going to be on cable TV as well, starting on May 15th. Just as a heads up, we still will have the chat going and so on, so y'all can still chat. One of the big differences, just that you're going to see over time. So for the next couple weeks, I'm only going to do a monologue. And then next month on the 15th, we'll start doing the full show, and it's more like a Tucker Carlson style. I'll have guests on and so on. So it's going to be more of that vein. I'll do my analysis, and we'll see about doing a Q&A or something like that. I know, I'm sorry, folks. It's going to be good, though. It's going to be a huge shift, and this is going to hopefully propel us, further into the world. We've been kind of stuck a little bit in an echo chamber just because we're censored so bad. So this is a big move for us, and one that will really help move things forward. It's going to be actually pretty good, I think, and interesting timing too with Tucker and Dan Bongino, and I don't know if they're competing with us, but BuzzFeed News going belly up. Really wild stuff. I will still read your comments, so if you're writing comments on the show, I will still go over them and so on. So there'll be some of that still. Thank you so much for your support, folks. And real quick too, if follow us for updates. I have not forgotten about the book list. In fact, I submitted to my producer my first recommendations. We're in the process of just building the website right now. If you want updates on Crossroads, go to Crossroads_Josh on Twitter. And you can also find same name on Instagram if you want updates on the show, scheduling, and also on the book list that we're releasing. So we're going to push forward with the whole book club again. that said, folks, thank you so much. And let's jump into the first stories for the day. Now, I want to start up from the top. This was actually, in my opinion, the biggest news story around, but of course everyone was focused on Tucker. Tucker Carlson getting dropped by Fox News. It's not clear whether it was an agreement between them. It's not clear whether he got fired. It's a lot of rumor right now. Other media, I saw some reports claiming it was based on his internal communications, criticizing Fox management. I personally don't buy that. But they're using that as the excuse. If you were to ask me, it might have something to do with the fact that BlackRock massively increased their investment at Fox, and if you're playing the BlackRock game, that means ESG score, environmental social governance score, and it means you got to play by the rules. And I assume that Tucker and probably Dan Bongino did not want to play by the new rules. Keep in mind, so Vanguard and BlackRock are two of the biggest investors at Fox. If you were to ask me, that's what's really going on. Just in my personal opinion. I'm not saying for a fact, but that's the sense I get, just on a personal opinion again. That said, though, one of the bigger stories that did happen, which I think should have been, frankly, the biggest story in the country, folks, Biden signed a war powers resolution. We're maybe going to war. How is that not the biggest story in the whole dang country? This reminds me of during the pandemic when the Pentagon came out and they're like, oh, hey, UFOs exist. Here's a video of a UFO. And everyone was like, oh, God, like, I don't have time for this right now. Don't tell me about aliens. Like, I'm dealing with this virus. And like, nobody even cared about the Pentagon UFO videos, because everyone was so busy thinking about other stuff. It's kind of the same thing. Oh, yeah, and by the way, Biden just signed a war powers resolution. Oh, yeah, what's next on the list? It's pretty incredible that such a massive story just kind of got pushed to the sidelines. But let me explain what happened, because in my opinion, this is actually the biggest story in the country right now. So let me show you the actual announcement from the White House. This is the official statement that they issued. It says, letter to the Speaker of the House and President pro tempore of the Senate consistent with the War Powers Resolution, Public Law 93-148. And it says, at my direction, and this is Joe Biden, him stating this, at my direction, United States Armed Forces personnel have conducted an operation to evacuate United States personnel and others from Khartoum, Sudan. In response to that's the capital of Sudan, by the way, to the deteriorating security situation in Sudan. To conduct and support this operation, United States Armed Forces personnel with appropriate combat equipment, meaning they're armed for war, deployed to Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Sudan. Djibouti is northern tip of Africa. It's it's right on the water of one of the major trade choke points. The United States Armed Forces personnel will remain deployed in Djibouti to protect United States personnel and others until the security situation no longer requires their presence, and additional forces are prepared to deploy to the region if required. And I'll explain why this matters. Biden says that I directed this action consistent with my responsibility to protect United States citizens, both at home and abroad, and in furtherance of United States national security and foreign policy interests, pursuant to my constitutional authority as Commander-in-Chief, head of the military, and Chief Executive, the President, and to conduct United States foreign relations. I am providing this report as part of my efforts to keep the Congress fully informed, consistent with the War Powers Resolution, Public Law 93-148. I appreciate the support of the Congress in these actions. Now, understand what this means. Biden, again, you have a developing war taking place in Sudan right now. Biden has sent troops to Djibouti to oversee any kind of evacuations taking place. Djibouti was one of the major staging grounds for U.S. air operations within that whole region, including actually into the Middle East. Into a lot of our operations, during Operation Iraqi Freedom and the, of course, war in Afghanistan, you typically had a lot of U.S. personnel deployed in Djibouti at our military base there. helping oversee those operations and deal with the whole situation. And so it's not unusual that we would have troops there. The difference is Biden saw it necessary to make a war powers resolution. Now, did they write a war powers resolution for other minor conflicts or other, let's say, operations that people would argue maybe we should have declared war on? Not really. Not all, I mean, sometimes they did, of course, but not really necessarily.